Delhi Public School Khana Session 2020-21 Climate Injustice a Greenhouse Gas Anomaly Project Assignment on Status of Impact of Global Warming Around the World submitted to Mr. Rajan Deep Singh submitted by Arjun Singla Class 9-8 Roll number 2. Introduction. Climate change is the most debated topic around the world. The reports of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have widely accepted the human hand behind the climate change. The most cited reason is greenhouse effect created due to the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This concentration is the result of industrial revolution which started in 1750s. Industrial revolution happened by exploiting today's developing and least developing countries, and these created today's most developed countries. These developed countries are now completely insulated and technologically advanced. Climate injustice. It is said that nature does not discriminate, but the impacts of climate change are felt disproportionately around the world as the environmental and health consequences of climate change affect low income countries and poor people, women, children, and elderly people in high income countries. The figure shows that at least developed and developing countries like India are most affected by climate change. On the other hand, developed countries like USA, Canada, and UK are least vulnerable for the effect of climate change. The environmental effect of climate change, like rise and fall in temperature, heavy precipitation, droughts, tropical cyclones, rise in sea level, will bring along with them many impacts that hammer human rights that even recognized by Universal Declaration of Human Rights ICCPR and ICESCR. In this slide, I have tried to explain the climate injustice corresponding to the various climate termed as climate crisis. For example, due to heat waves, injustice such as variety of heat-related disorders, exhibition of cardiovascular diseases, respiratory disorder, and chronic conditions. Similarly, due to the rise in sea level, there will be forced migration, coastal erosion, extract right of self-determination, collective violence due to extreme weather events like heavy precipitation, drought, cyclones. There will be loss of food crops, loss of livelihood, vector-borne diseases, waterborne and food-borne diseases, food insecurity, malnutrition. The above discussion shows that there are climate injustice embedded in the global warming. Thus, there is a need of climate justice, that is, the benefit and burdens of climate change should be distributed equitably, keeping in the mind of the historical underpinnings. This calls for duty on nation and international government to ensure that all of these human rights are promoted and protected. Now is the time to act. International measures. The UNFCCC has concluded that human rights consideration should guide the development, implementation, and monitoring of policies, institutions, and mechanisms in relation to climate change. The framework recognizes the concept of common but differentiated responsibility, respective capability. It means it wants countries to take responsibility to tackle climate change according to their roles in creating this mess and their paying capacity. Thus, developed countries are held responsible for taking mitigation and adaptive measures. They also have to help at least developed and developing countries in coping with the climate challenges. Therefore, the principle polluter pay came into being. Recently, under this framework, a new agreement called Paris Agreement was signed and adopted in 2016. This agreement calls for the state to come up with their own targets of emission reduction so that the average global temperature should not rise above 2 degrees Celsius, and effect should be made to keep it between 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. Out of 197 countries have initially adopted the Paris Agreement. Of those, 189 have solidified their climate proposal for formal approval. For now, the only major emitting countries that have yet to formally join the climate agreement are Russia, Turkey, and Iran, but the period of this target would be implemented post 2020. The problem before the world is that USA has withdrawn from Paris Agreement. USA had adopted America First policy, ignoring the fact that climate change sees no boundary. Thus, countries will have to rise bar in their effect. Moreover, the president election in USA will decide whether USA will join in the further or not. India's measure in its INDC, India has pledged to improve the emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 below 2005 levels. It has also pledged to increase the share of non-fossil fuels based electricity by 40 to 40% by 2030. It has agreed to enhance its forest cover, which will absorb 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2030. Its INDC is as good as China's and better than the USA's, considering the both these countries have higher emission than India and are economically more capable of reducing their emission and mitigating climate change. India recently has completed its target of setting 20 GW of solar power, which is a big step in renewable energy, but India policy of forests are still lacking behind as there are multiple laws governing the field which create a lot of confusion in implementation. India should make effective decouple its development measures for from from greenhouse gas, as it will not only help in preserving a pristine environment but will help in reducing import of coal, gas, and oil, which take a big chunk out of our foreign reserves. Conclusion: from the above study, it is evident that climate change is caused by human and has led to different injustices. These injustices demand moral and ethical solution. It is high time that world realize that impact of climate change no boundaries. Therefore, a collective effect is needed. A top to bottom solution taken in the past are not helpful. The bottom to top approach involving local and indigenous people and local government NGOs and governments from the around will be a step in the right direction.